I think it turned off again. No, never mind. The technology always gets the better of me. Here we are again, working on learning how to live permanently in the heart. What does that mean? It means to live in the enlightened state. The great Ramana Maharshi, in whose neck of the woods we are right now here in Tiruvannamalai, said enlightenment is to dissolve the mind into the heart. So how do we do that? How can that be done? And what does it actually mean? When you think back over your life, you may remember certain moments when you were completely alive, completely experiencing your world through the open heart. Perhaps there wasn't a thought in your mind, certainly not a disturbing thought. You didn't need anything, you had no desires, no aversions. Everything was exactly the way you wanted it to be. That's a taste of the enlightened state. That's a taste of living in the open heart. And we've all had glimpses of that here and there. But the task now is to live in this state of the open heart 24/7. Now, the amazing thing is that the heart is already present in us. And I'm not, as those of you who are familiar with heart sourcing know, talking about an emotional state. I'm not talking about a heart chakra. I'm talking about the very essence of our being, the very essence of creation itself. That is available to all of us at any time in the very core of the heart, which is the equivalent of the point on the top of the head in the progress of Kundalini, up the spine, into the merging of Shiva and Shakti over the top of the head. Now, when we go one octave higher in our being into the causal body, from the astral body into the causal body, then we find that same complete reality of oneness in the very core of our being. That is the Hridayam, our true timeless identity. And we all have the capacity to drop into the heart again and again, to go deeper and deeper. And yes, we have to do this again and again. It doesn't just happen once or twice, because the mind is conditioned. You know, see, we may have this wonderful moment in the heart, and then pop, we're back in the mind. And we're worrying about things, we're wanting things, we're confused about things, etc. And all it takes is one stressful thought. What happens to the heart? It's closed. So the mind needs to be trained. It needs to be emptied out of itself into the heart. Enlightenment is when the mind dissolves into the heart. Now, the heart is not some kind of blissful state, spaced out state where we become completely irrelevant and irresponsible and not present to the world around us. Not at all. It's exactly the opposite. The heart is the place of universal love, What does that mean? All-encompassing love. A love that does not leave anything out. A love that embraces reality as it is and sees the perfection in each moment. And through that, it is also the seat of wisdom, of the deep or high intuitive intelligence that can guide us through life absolute securely, because it is the Satguru, the true form of the Guru, that wisdom and love inside of us. Now, let's do a practice today, and we do a special practice focusing on the power of mantra. And I want to encourage you to use a very simple mantra today. My mantra couldn't be any simpler. It's 3 letters, Ram, R-A-M. And it goes like this: Ram, 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 Ram. This comes from the lineage of my guru, and I can freely offer you this mantra. You don't need to be initiated. You're basically initiating yourself into the mantra by its use. Or you can use any other mantra that really touches your heart, that speaks to you. Now, there is a stage where we experiment with different mantras. We try this one, we try that one, and that's fine. But eventually you may want to settle on one and take that mantra into its true depth. And if you choose one of the great mantras that were given to us by the great sages, they have a power in them. The mantra itself takes you deep. It's not just a tool that gets the mind to be quiet and focused. Yeah, it does that too. But there is a divine power installed in these mantras, these sounds, that can do the job of dissolving the mind into the heart. And just like using a mantra, you wouldn't say, oh, mantras, I've done them once, I know what they're all about. Obviously, they live in the repetition of them. And the same is true of heart sourcing. So the more you do it, the more you let go of the mind and its worries and desires, the more you allow yourself to come to the heart and use not just formal periods of meditation, but any moment during the day. Maybe there's a little empty space. Maybe you're not busy with some specific focus task. Why not breathe into the heart? Why not use the mantra to bring your attention here? Every time you do it, you may not have some great experience with all the bells ringing, but these moments of practice, no matter how small, they're cumulative. It's like a stair-stepping process. And in that stair-stepping process, you take yourself out of whatever pit of suffering you tend to fall into. So I shared with you my mantra. You can use any mantra you like. And what we'll do today is we will have this meditation and go into the heart. And then imagine that the mantra repeats itself in that space, in the very core of your being, in the heart. Because the mantra is not only a sound, it can also be intoned in a particular area in the body. And then I invite you to just allow the mantra to work on you. So there'll be a longer period of silence today in this meditation. So you can experience the effect of the mantra. Now, the mantra, of course, can unfold its effect, and you can actually notice the effect through stillness. And that's how it's very beneficial if you practice, you train yourself to be able to sit really still, in stillness, physically not moving. I know the mind is a different story, it may go here and there. But when the body is unmoving, it like inspires the mind also to settle down. And please don't fight the mind. That's hopeless. Because whenever you fight the mind, that energy that you're fighting it with becomes the energy of the mind fighting back at you. So just notice it's going on and on about something, but you don't have to go with it there. You can simply just observe the story that's running in the mind and notice both the story and the observer, the witness. And if you stay with the witness, the story will soon spin out and you come back into the heart, into stillness. And then maybe another story comes and you come back into the heart. And you know, that's meditation. Don't expect yourself to sit down and be still. That is just not happening in the mind. But with time, it can happen. And then an inner door opens to amazing richness, amazing experiences of depth that will make you a junkie. They will give you such a deep sense of fulfillment and wonder that you will want to come back to that again and again. And that is the healthiest and best thing you can do with your life, because as you experience the heart, you become filled. And as you're filled, that fullness will share itself with your world. So, enough talk. Sit comfortably and relaxed. I say, let your body take on the kind of posture that you want to be symbolic for the state of mind you want to achieve. So it won't be like slumping and leaning, and so you sit, but you sit relaxed and straight in a meditative posture. For this exercise, you don't have to do that every time you do heart sourcing. But now we do a formal meditation, so we're taking on a formal position and we're maintaining it. That physical non-movement is very powerful because, as I said, it translates into the mind. So bring your attention to the very center of your being, the Hridayam, the cave of the heart. And begin to feel the breath moving in and out of that core of the heart. Yes, it's a visualization. It doesn't actually go in and out of there. But through that visualization, you can bring your attention to the heart and get a deeper and more persistent focus. And picture the very core of your being as a brilliant point of light that is powerfully attractive to your awareness. Allow your awareness to be linked with that brilliant point of light. Let it be drawn into it. And as your awareness flows into the heart, allow that point of light to expand and become like a small sun in the middle of your chest. And as that sun establishes itself in your chest, begin the use of your mantra. Simple and steady, using the mantra of your choice. And know that the mind will take its excursions, it's okay. Just observe the mind and bring it back again and again into the soft, great warmth of the heart. And notice the effect of the mantra. And you may notice that the mantra takes on the rhythm of the breath, perhaps, or of your heartbeat. And if it does that, just allow it to align itself with these body functions. If you lose the mantra, just come back to it. And notice the effect. And notice the quality of the heart. Notice the particular anchoring of the mind into the heart through the mantra. And receive this essence of the heart, this essence of stillness and of love from the very core of your being. Receive it in all the parts of your being, in your body, your mind, your emotions. Open to that incredible wealth inside of you, the absolute abundance of the heart. And then take a deep breath. Exhale. Open your eyes again. And feel for a moment, before you start moving, feel your body. And continue to receive the essence of the heart. This receiving is so important. We do and do and do all the time. But how much of the time do we relax and allow ourselves to receive? So if you have any questions, I invite you to send them in right now so we can have a bit of a dialogue. This was a bit of a technical meditation today, if you will. So there may be some questions or maybe not. So what are we doing here? We are recognizing that the essence of what every being strives for, the essence of love, the essence of the light of our being, is not outside primarily, it is there too, but is first and foremost in the very core of our being. And we're going to that core to fill ourselves with that essence. And that is a precondition to sharing it. Most love that happens between people grows stale because it gets mixed in with wanting, needing from the other person. And it's a lack of understanding. We live in this delusion as though the love, the essence of happiness is coming from the other person, and then we want it, and we want to make contracts and tie them to us, so we have this essence now all the time. And that has to lead to problems in the relationship, maybe not a relationship breakup, but a certain frustration, an underlying dissatisfaction. Now ask yourself about your relationships, if that's there. Any of the relationships to your close ones. Do you feel frustrated with them? Do you want them to be more available, to be more there, to be more loving, to be more giving, etc., etc.? To the extent that you do, your love has become conditional. And conditional love is not love. We call it by the same name, but that is a mistake. Conditional love is a trade. You give me this, I give you that. I give you attention, I do the dishes, I do mend your clothes, I do whatever. And your job is to give me this, 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 and the love. Now imagine a relationship where you are completely fulfilled within yourself. And you're so fulfilled that you are readily willing to share. You can't wait, but share this love. Let the abundance flow from you to the other person. There's never a point of need in that. There's just the recognition of the blessings that you have in the presence of the other person. And with that, you have peace, and you have a tremendous joy in the company of your beloved. And if they, for some reason, move away, do something else, you can allow it. You may say to them something like, well, don't you think you're missing something? And then they hear it or they don't. Because if you've noticed, people come closer, people come move away. If you were really the center of your universe, in love and in peace, could you allow people to come closer, to move away? Would you feel shaken by that? Would you feel betrayed and abandoned? Where does that come from? Expectations. And a attitude in relationships that is extremely common, but ultimately not at all helpful. And I'm not excusing acts of unkindness of whatever type. But whether you are in peace or in war is up to you. You can refuse to go to need, to anger, to hatred, to all of those negative emotions that we fall into. You can refuse it. Because you can recognize you have everything you need in you, but can you find it there? That's where the practice comes in. So perhaps I should close by telling some of what has happened here since we arrived maybe a week or so ago in Tiruvannamalai. We're living close to the ashram of Ramana Maharshi, who passed away many years ago in 1950, I think, and has left a remarkable place filled with the power of his presence. Now, when I say stuff like that, it may not make sense to some people at all. Because in our culture, we have generally not learned to be sensitive to subtle vibrations, subtle energies. And yet this place, a Hindu ashram at the foot of some mountain, has attracted for many decades now a constant stream of people from all over the world, just because of that subtle energy that is here. And this is what the great Mahasiddhas can do for us. They imbue a particular place with the power of their presence. Last week we spoke about my guru's ashram in the foothills of the Himalayas. This week we'll speak about this place. So what happened is I walked in, I've never been here, so I walk into the temple. And there is a life-size statue of Ramana. And I was just not thinking about anything to expect, and I walk into this space, and there he's sitting in that statue. Now, that may sound weird. Let me explain. There was a statue of this great man. And a statue, like a picture, can be alive. It can be imbued with the presence of that being. In terms of pictures, when you see a picture of a saint or somebody of very high accomplishments, like a Mahasiddha, and you look at the eyes, and you look at the eyes not just looking, but you look at the eyes with a sense of devotion. It is possible that the picture comes alive. What it means is this being suddenly looks back at you. And it is very different to look at a pair of printed or painted eyes, or have that being actually look at you and recognize you and you recognize that being. And that's not something that only happens to yogis and beings who've trained in this for a long time. I remember a gentleman I worked with many years ago when I was doing therapy. And he had gotten himself into some hot water by having an affair. And it wasn't the first time. So his wife threw him out of the house. Now he was part of a big clan. There was a big family with an involved family business and uncles and aunts and children and grandchildren. And he was very unhappy about what he had done and what had happened as a result. And he had been raised Catholic. So I said to him, what about your old Catholic roots? And he said, I've been to church in 30 years. But he was hurting enough that he found his way back to his church with my support. And he went to Mass, and Mass didn't do anything for him. He couldn't relate to it. And then he hung around after Mass was over and people left, and eventually ended up wandering around the grounds. And in the back of the church, he found a little pavilion that had a statue of Mother Mary in it. And he walked in there and he got zapped. She was there. And he broke down and he spent 3 hours in that little pavilion speaking to her, because he wasn't crazy, not at all. It was actually an extremely sane thing for him to do, because she was there in that statue. And he spoke to her for 3 hours about his life, about his failings, about his hopes, about his love. And when he came back to me 2 days later, he was a changed man. Now, it wasn't a complete change, there was more to do. But the man who had first walked into my office was not someone open to true change. Very set in his ways. And the man who walked in a few days later was open and malleable and transparent to something else within him that gave him hope. And he went back to be with Mary, with this statue, several more times. And one time he came to me and said, I actually walked up to the statue and looked closely at the eyes, and I saw they were painted. They weren't real when I looked like that. And then I sat back on the bench and there she was again, and I was talking to her. So this experience of the direct recognition of a sacred being through the medium of a statue or a picture is not such a rare thing. And when I walked into Ramana's ashram, and there was this statue, he was in that statue. That statue was alive for me. And I had a profound momentary experience of seeing this small man. It was a small physical stature. And what an incredible giant he was. The giant of a being. He had an experience at 16 years old. He laid down and he had an experience of his own death. And he faced it and resolved it right there and then. And it showed him that he was not that which could die. It showed him that he was the essence of conscious awareness, or we would say loving awareness, that is timeless and only temporarily joined to this body. And it was then that he got himself a train ticket, didn't tell anybody, got on a train, drove about, I think it was 30 miles or so, to the sacred mountain he had heard about, Arunachala. And there ended up living in a cave for many years. First with just a very small group of students around him who had recognized the greatness in this young man. And then he moved to some other places around the mountain and eventually to his ashram at the foot of the mountain. And there is a room in this ashram, a meditation room, that is incredibly charged with his essence. And it's, in his case, the essence is profoundly still. And my guru's essence is the essence of love. In Ramana's ashram, it is the essence of stillness. But that stillness, you see, is the ground in which all our inner experiences can be detected. We can actually get to know ourselves in that stillness. Without stillness, what happens? The mind just hops from one thing to the other, constantly, constantly, constantly. Always busy with external things that have nothing much to do with our true essence. And the second day I was there, I looked through a window and something else happened with a picture at this time. And there was a picture on the far wall, and I saw distinctly the presence of my guru sitting there on in this picture. And I said, oh. And it was again this living presence, this living essence of this great Siddha. And I walked into the room and I looked at the picture, and there was a picture of Ramana Maharshi with some of his students. And it was just my guru's way of showing that on this sublime level of realization, there is no difference. There's a difference in expression between these beings. Jesus is different from Buddha in their expression, but not in their essence. And that shows us in one sentence the great era of religions who are at war with each other because everyone thinks they have the only right way. There's only one God, one supreme being, one supreme loving awareness, and it is most tangibly present in the depth of our heart. So what we are trying to accomplish with heart sourcing, it's not a little thing. It is the highest accomplishment human beings are capable of. And that's why it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Something easy, how much worth does it have? People climb Mount Everest because it's not easy. But that's a puny adventure compared to climbing the mountain of peace inside you. Finding the peak of this accomplishment of love and peace and profound self-awareness in you. So I lay this at your feet, this invitation to come to the heart again and again. And let that essence of the heart flush out whatever obstructions have attached themselves to your soul. The conditioned mind, the habits of painful emotions. And what you need with them, to do with them, is to simply see them, to see through them. They're like shadows dancing in front of you, so you cannot see the pure love, the pure light that shines back to you in the mirror of your life. So we polish that mirror. We polish that mirror so we can live in that place of absolute comfort and unshakable security that is at the very core of our being. Namaste.